This is a really energetic fan animation of Pac Man. It's animated all by one person, Jonas D. And this animator has other really awesome animations on Sonic the Hedgehog. So you can really see some Sonic the Hedgehog influence in this short, with Pac Man turning into Spin Dash and, of course, having extreme speed, going supersonic. So let's look at this frame by frame. Right off the bat, we have this chromatic aberration that you can see around the corners of the line work. It just adds a bit of variety to the line. Pac Man has this really squashy and stretchy kind of skull. So we have this sort of stretch frame that pushes up, and then he maintains his volume and comes back into his more circular form. And he's got these rubber hose style pie eyes, which really helps with the appeal and sell the charm of the classic era. And then there's these little particles going around, and around the screen you can see that there's some lens flare, and the background is blurred, so it creates a little bit more depth. And now this is really cool. Pac-Man's eye, as he comes in, it spins around, and we can see these smears kind of breaking apart to help sell the speed. And then it cuts to this next shot, but it does a match cut where it maintains the eyeball looking like Pac-Man, and then cuts to this next shot, but it's linked up from the eye, so it all continues the form. And then we get this guy's eye, so we're sort of staying with the theme of focusing on the eyes, and then we're introduced to this character, and then there's all these special effects going everywhere, and he does a cool little character reveal. I'm not familiar with the Pac-Man lore, but I'm sure he's like one of the main baddies in the game, and he shoots down his powers, and we can see these nice little particle effects animated in the background, this goo kind of ripping apart. And there's a lot of camera shake. If we go by slow, we can see that this is just one drawing of Pac-Man. So the animator just created one drawing for Pac-Man, but the background is shaking all around, and he's shaking all around, so it doesn't feel static. If this shot was just static, then we wouldn't get this sort of earthquake effect going here. So that camera shake really adds a bit more energy to this shot. And then we see more explosions and chaos happening. Now I really like this. Pac-Man doing a spin dash, and as he's stretching along here, he's got these little stars shooting from behind him, following the same path of motion. So it helps guide the eye in the direction that he's turning towards the right. And then the background, this road, is drawn in such a way that it communicates this great sense of depth, because the road is really wide up close to us, and then it turns around, curves around, and pinches to a single point around this edge of the screen. And then we follow along here, and the camera turns around. Now this is all 2D. This isn't like a 3D set, so you have to draw this changing perspective, and this really helps show these little circular curve of the road, really helps to show the perspective that we're seeing here. And now it's like Pac-Man's coming towards us, and now he's zooming screen left. So, and then he does this cool little held pose, and then jumps up, and what's trailing behind him, of course, is the smoke from the ground. Now, if I were to give a critique on this little part where he jumps up, I would do maybe one more anticipation pose. Pac-Man's pretty short, so he can't really crouch down that much more, but I might have just done one little cushion down, just have him squash down just a bit before he leaps up, because this right here, it could use just a little bit more energy to show him how he's jumping so high. Like, where did all this energy come from? It feels a little bit like he needed a little bit more wind up in the spring for the propulsion to shoot up. That's just a little nitpick. Otherwise, you're not really going to notice that, because there's so much happening. And this is expertly animated. Now look at this impact frame. So, that's a cool stretch on that guy's face there. I really like this stretch frame. Then when he comes in for the punch, the screen flashes white, to cut to the next part where he's like all blue and Pac-Man's all red. This impact frame, when you have a big change in color or invert the colors on an impact frame or make everything go like sketchy black and white, and there's a big difference in contrast between where the characters are from between where they're being impacted and where they are beforehand or afterwards, this contrast, if we're flicking back and forth here, we can really almost feel the impact of this hit, like it's hitting us. It's hitting our visual cortex. This light is blinding our eyes and just snapping us, and we can feel it. And got some more energy effects, dodging, spin dash, and then we got these more particles and some like cherries from the game. That's a nice little nod to the game universe. And some more particle effects and stars trailing behind as he falls. And camera shake, intensity, lots of things happening on screen at all times. And now look at this. This has almost become like a lineless style here. It's more about these smear frames. There are lines, but the lines are colored. They aren't black. They're colored in colors that are harmonious to the flat colors of the characters. So it creates this sort of smushy, mushy feeling. And the shadows and the highlights are all stretched really far in the direction that they're moving. That creates more impact. As you can see him punching here, see these stretched out colors. Now it's a little vague if we just look at this frame, but the next frame shows the impact and then finally the reaction after the punch. If you watch this back and you really pay attention, you'll notice that there's a lot of held poses on certain parts, but whenever things are held, the camera's shaking, so it's always simulating this feeling of movement. There's a ton of particle effects. There's a ton of squash and stretch, some smears. The smears do a lot of heavy lifting between bridging the gap between point A and point B. So whenever there's really wide spacing, you'll see a smear frame help to move the character's body or body part to the other side of the screen. Now, the smear frame can be used to replace in-betweens. So instead of having to draw a bunch of in-betweens from my hand going from here, in between, the keyframe here, you could draw a keyframe here, and then have a big smear frame in the middle that bridges the gap, and that is more effective for showing extreme speed. And of course you would notice this on live action films or looking at like a boxing match. If you pause the screen when the person's being punched, you'll see this wide gap, this smear of the boxing glove. If you have other ideas for anime, cartoons, or video game trailers that I should react to and analyze, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. If you make YouTube videos or live streams, check out animeloop.com, where you can download royalty-free animated clips and transition overlays for video editing. There's also animation courses.